Hello and welcome to our snow safety workshop live here from the MAMMUT headquarters in Switzerland. We are all very happy that you all are part of this online presentation. As you know, our goal is to make your outdoor and snow adventure as safe as possible. Safety is part of the DNA of MAMMUT. We want you to be best prepared if you go for free riding or ski touring. In today's workshop, we will explain how to read the terrain, where to see danger zones, and how to plan your trip when you go out there. We will also train you in the use of our Avalanche safety products to make sure that you know how to use them in the worst case. If time is your enemy, fast is your friend. Please welcome our experts for tonight's show. We have Ilari Dammert. Ilari, since 10 years with MAMMUT and head of Avalanche safety products, he actually is responsible for the development of all our safety products. Ilari is a passionate freerider and knows exactly what's needed if you go out there and how to prepare yourself. We also welcome Holly Walker. Holly will be live with us from Canada. She's now since 6 years part of the MAMMUT Pro team of Northern America. She's an apprentice ski guide of the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides, and she's also professional member of the Canadian Avalanche Association. Holly actually grew up in the mountains and knows this area by heart. She will explain to us how to prepare and how to read the terrain out there. This is actually an interactive workshop, so you are more than welcome to leave your comments, to ask your questions, and we will make sure to give you all the answers during the workshop and after the workshop in our Q&A session with our experts. Now, enjoy the show, and I will hand over to Holly for the first part.
How do we know we made a right decision if nothing went wrong?
5:50 a.m. Pack all necessary gear. Transceiver, probe, shovel, down jacket, first aid kit, skins. I always want to know the product I'm using works 100% of the time, because then I can rely on it for every day I spend in the backcountry. Being well trained in avalanche rescue and knowing that I use the best avalanche safety equipment on the market adds extra security to my day. I want to learn how to play safe and ski another day.
Hello, I'm Holly from Canada. I live in the Coast Mountains here in Squamish, and I want to talk to you all about avalanche problems. But first off, let's watch a video of an avalanche accident that happened in 2019. It was February in the Pyrenees Mountains.
This looks good, huh?
Yeah, super good. Little bit crusty.
Be careful, Tommy. Wait. Be careful, up. Okay.
Let's go down. We're not good to stay here, huh?
No, it's not good. Avalanche. Yes. Oh.
So my question is, why did this avalanche occur in the first place? Luckily, everyone survived. Let's talk about the scenario. Tuktalalanka peak is 2,655 meters high, and the avalanche ran 380 meters. The width was 120 meters. But there's a bigger reason besides the size, is how was the snowpack made up? There was a soft slab sitting on top of a buried persistent weak layer on the next slide. This made up of death hoar and faceted crystals. If we can, thank you. So what had happened is 3 days earlier, it snowed, and then it snowed, and then it snowed. And the avalanche danger from a 4 to a 3 to a 2. So it doesn't seem like that big of a problem to go skiing a big slope when the rating is only 2. But if we have a look at the slope, it was over 35 degrees in steepness, the angle, and there was also a lot of cliffs creating an unsupported slope. It was also an east-northeast aspect of complex terrain. And what had been discussed in the forecast was, even though the danger rating had been lowered to 2, there was still warnings of depth hoar, and it remained, and it could be reactive and easily triggered by a human. So unfortunately, these gentlemen were caught in this avalanche. Luckily, everyone survived and were able to learn from it. But let's talk a little bit more closely about what it means, avalanche danger ratings. So in the next slide, we talk about the danger rating scale, and it goes from 1 all the way to 5, and we'll talk a little bit more about that after. But there's 5 different types of snow that can exist that causes these slab layers that can avalanche. So we have new snow, we have wind-drifted snow, persistent weak layers, wet snow, and gliding. So the most complicated, though, I find, is persistent weak layers, because we never know when that's going to occur. New snow, we know when it fell overnight, we know a new problem is existing. But later in the season, with wet snow, it could warm up more than we expected. Just like in that avalanche that occurred, they had a persistent weak layer, and they also had warm weather that day. More specifically is the avalanche problems, and I know there's a lot of information on this slide, so I'm just going to summarize it for you all to make it a little bit simpler. So back to our 5 problems. We have new snow, which can release as a slab avalanche. It is recommended we wait 1 to 3 days. I don't know, but I get pretty excited when it snows a lot overnight, so I question, has it formed into a slab? And the biggest reasoning can be due to the wind. And so that's when we talk about a wind-drifted snow slab. It's very trigger happy, and it can also stay in the terrain to 1 to 3, maybe more days. For wet snow, this is talking about water that weakens the snowpack. So we probably have to finish skiing early. In the springtime, I've gone skiing at 4 in the morning and gone home by 10 in the morning. And that's the end of my ski day because it gets so warm in the springtime. We also have to be cautious of rain as well. Another problem is the persistent weak layer, which I mentioned. This is definitely the most difficult to manage. With the slab-like layer on top, we must be defensive in our terrain choices. This problem can last for a few days, few weeks, to even months. We currently have this problem on the coast mountains in British Columbia. Gliding snow is also a problem, and it can fracture, and it primarily happens on sunny slopes and typically below tree line. Let's do some little quizzes here. My question for you on the next slide is, which avalanche problem is pictured here? Can anyone guess? So new snow, wind-drifted snow, persistent weak layer, wet snow slab, or gliding snow. As you can all see, there's gliding snow is occurring here. Sliding on the surface. The next one is wind-drifted snow. I gave you all the answer. You can see that there has been loading on the lee aspect of the mountain. So again, the choices: new snow, wind-drifted snow, weak persistent, wet snow, and gliding snow. So definitely there's a lot of wind that is loaded on this slope, and there's a lot of unsupported features with the rocks. In the next slide, you'll see a lot of plumes. So when we can look up at the mountains and we see snow being stripped from the peaks, we know that wind is being transported, all the snow, to the lee side of the aspect. So it goes from the windward side to the lee side. And I'm super tempted when I see wind-loaded snow. It looks beautiful, but you can feel it with your ski pole. It's quite hard, and I avoid that at all costs. We must be careful in zones where the steep wind-drifted snow has been deposited, like this photo. In the next slide, what problem do we think is pictured here? Again, we have the choices of new snow, wind-drifted snow, persistent weak layer, wet snow slab, or gliding snow. So this picture is the persistent weak layer again. So my big question is, how do we go or no go? How do we make that decision? My questions I'm always asking is, what is the avalanche rating that day? Can the group travel one at a time to decrease the level of risk of the group? Can they avoid traveling through the start zones of a potential avalanche danger? And can they change their route plan altogether if they're not comfortable? If you look at this photo, where do you think is a spot you wouldn't want to go? So right there, I can see there's a potential start zone, and I'd want to avoid that terrain, especially if the avalanche rating that day is high. So what are the ratings? The scale, and there's 5 categories. I'll let you all do homework after this presentation if you go onto your Avalanche website. We have low, moderate, considerable, high, and very high. What's tempting is when people see considerable, they think, well, that's not very high, so it can't be that bad. And the most dangerous ratings are actually 2 moderate, and 3 considerable. You have 30% chance of avalanches occurring with considerable and 50% with moderate, which I always question, well, why is not more avalanches happening with humans in it? Well, rating is very high. Well, I don't know about you all. I actually enjoy hot chocolate by my fireplace, or I avoid avalanche slopes altogether when it's very high. So, and the next slide, the question is, what is the current rating? Well, it's hard to guess just looking at a photo. I'll let you think for a minute when you see something this large occurring. There's a very large crown, and it was sliding on a persistent weak layer. So right there I have clues. Okay, large avalanches occurring, and I have a persistent weak layer. The answer in this slide is 4. It's high. So talking about different ways that we can evaluate the rating scale, there's the golden triangle by, excuse my pronunciation, Werner Munter. He uses an assessment of avalanche risks in unprotected alpine areas, and this accounts for avalanche rating, the angle of the slope, and the aspect of the slope. And remember, like I said, you know, in this example, the rating's only 3, which doesn't seem that high, but it's actually a very high chance that people get into accidents when there's a level 3, especially in this case where we have a steep slope, and it's also untracked, it's seldom traveled. So things to think about, you know, even though it doesn't seem that high, an avalanche can still definitely occur, as we saw in that video earlier, where their rating that day was only a 2. So if we can't control the snow, what can we control? Well, we can control our terrain choices. So when we're out in the terrain, think about how we're going to travel through it safely. When we look at skiers traveling up the slope, I'm always thinking, how am I, the weight of myself, how am I going to affect the snowpack? And can I avoid causing too much stress to it? And if you look at when we travel as a group, we're all pushing big, if we go to the next slide, we're all pushing big stress bubbles into the snowpack. So, you know, me as one skier, like we saw in that last slide, I'm not causing too much stress on the terrain, but can I choose to travel, like in this picture, a lower angled slope with no overhead hazard? And when I'm choosing to ski down, can I avoid convex slopes, unsupported slopes, cliffs like we saw in that video, and stay on plainer, safe slopes? So, you know, when there's a group traveling, ski touring together, well, they're not following COVID protocols. They're quite close together in this photo, but they're also stressing the snowpack with over 10 people. So how would we choose to manage that? In the next slide, we can spread out as a ski touring group. We can choose to travel on ridge lines that is safer. We can ski down one at a time and not on top of each other, causing stress in the snowpack. And when we stop and we regroup, I always want to keep my group in vision of each other, but also stop in a safe spot where there's no overhead hazard and I'm not standing below a person that could trigger an avalanche on top of me. So if we look at the next slide, we can see this group is traveling across the slope. We can't see in the photo to know if there's an overhead hazard, but they're being quite cautious and spreading out, you know, a bus length apart, one at a time. And it's interesting because if we look at animals and how they travel through the snowpack, well, they have done some avalanche studies themselves and know how to manage the terrain quite carefully. In the next slide, we look at the slopes and how we choose to travel down it. You can see in this photo, it's a quite planar slope, and we're avoiding the sides. It's unsupported, and as well, myself, I'm always looking to ski the thickest part of the snowpack. That's where it's strongest. I'm avoiding shallow, rocky zones, so I want to stay on super well supported, thick sections of the snowpack. Right now, at home, like I was telling you, here on the coast, we have a persistent problem, and avalanches are occurring on unsupported slopes and where rocky sections occur. So it's simple. I'm still skiing lots. I'm just skiing the super fat part of the snowpack. In this next slide, we have a look at what factors do we need to cause an avalanche accident. Well, we talked about the triangle. We have snow, we have terrain, and we have humans. You know, if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, did it really fall? Well, if an avalanche occurs and no one's there, well, we never knew it happened. So 90% of the time, a human is what the trigger is. It's who causes the avalanche, and then someone is buried in the avalanche if they're unable to ski out of it. So how can we choose to ski in a safer manner? So like I already talked about, I want to ski in the thickest part of the snowpack, and I want to not have skiers skiing into me. So in this next slide, when we're out in the terrain and we're making those decisions, what is the most difficult decision for you to put into practice? So I'll give you another little quiz here. You have A, avalanche transceiver check. Well, that's easy. We can do that at the car first thing in the morning. B, making the most of the terrain. Can we manage it? C, spacing. Well, that's easy to space out. We can do that. D, the orientation. Can I choose to avoid south-facing, sun-affected slopes and just stay on the north all day? Sure, I've got a compass in my pocket. And the group. Can I choose my partners wisely? Do I know who I'm meeting that day? Do I know what training they have? That's great. So what do you all think the hardest thing to manage is? So for me, it's the terrain, because the spacing, the orientation, and the group, the avalanche transceiver check, that was all easy. So just remember, make it the most out of your terrain choices. And when planning the day, you have to think about the conditions, the terrain, but as well the human factors. And it's important to always have alternative plans when it comes to making a route decision plan that day. So how are we going to travel up this slope here? You can see the red line. It's a shorter, easier spot to travel up, but there's a slope over our heads. What's another option, a safer place to go? So yeah, we can keep a wide berth and avoid that overhead hazard. And we could also choose to spread out the group and only be traveling under that slope one at a time. It may take a little bit longer, but everyone stays safer. So I'd rather have a good beer at the end of the day with all of my friends than the opposite occur. So the last thing talking about when we're traveling out in the terrain is we have to remember our final risk consideration, such as what is our skin track route, our descent route, and always remember you have a go or no go option. So you always know where you traveled from, and you should be choosing the safest route to travel up. So even though that fun, awesome, big, wide powder slope looks amazing, maybe the conditions aren't right, and I can always go back the way I came. Because like we were talking about, 90% of avalanches are always caused by humans. But do you ever get that gut feeling that something is just not right, can we justify our decision making as humans? So when we're looking at the human factors on the next slide, I always want to know, is my decisions coming from the heat of the moment? Is it based on intuition and emotion? That's not a bad thing, but can I justify that decision that was occurring? Can I avoid the heat of the moment and switch on my cold side of my brain and actually slow down and come up with what facts really made this conditions occur? And can I factor in all the consequences? So the next slide, I'm always, from when I leave the car in the morning to when I get back in the evening, sitting by the fireplace, literally every moment in the day, I'm not looking at the skis of the person in front of me setting the track and not paying attention. I'm really making critical decisions all day long, whether I'm vocalizing or not. I'm thinking. And then I have to stop and actually have that conversation with my backcountry partner. And it's interesting how many people just go out for the day and they just didn't think that hard. Robin Horgath coined the term wicked learning environments. And this represents situations with great downsides where individuals don't get the feedback to make good decisions. Avalanche decision-making is like a wicked learning environment. If an avalanche didn't occur, do you think you made the right decisions that day, or did you simply just get lucky? So the next slide, I want to welcome all new users to the backcountry, but I want us to be aware of our own backcountry partners' abilities. Don't just care about yourself, care about others and care about how you're working together as a team. And be careful of heuristic traps such as social facilitation. Myself, I've fallen into it before, the pressures of Instagram and getting the photo, and I always wanted to have the cover of the magazine. But remember, we want to have a fun day, but we want to stay as safe as possible. And a party in the backcountry must be open with their communication and their decision making. We have to avoid group thinking, just conformity. We're just going to ski that because they want to ski that. No, let's all discuss. Let's make that decision as a group together. And let's critically evaluate so we not just one, but all have a fantastic day in the backcountry. The last thing that I want to say is, remember, practice our terrain management, practice our avalanche rescue. And now thank you so much to Ilari. He's going to talk all about avalanche rescue with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly, for guiding us to this complex topic of avalanches, of traveling to the avalanche terrain, and especially for making our decisions. Welcome everybody of you to have a look into how to organize ourselves in the rescue, or if the worst case happen, just right in place. I think Holly talks a lot about be prepared, look at the different factors and the different terrain features. But I think if we're planning our tour in the beginning, we should know where we can get our help if something happened. And that means be prepared. As long as you have a cell phone reception, know which is the right number to call the professional rescue crews. There's a good example if we go to Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have the 1414. So for all of you coming into Switzerland, riding deep pow pow, put those numbers in your cell phone. That's the Swiss air rescue team. They have a lot of helicopters spread out over Switzerland. Give them a call if you're in an avalanche or have some accident, and they will help you. For all others traveling or outside Switzerland, in Europe or internationally into the avalanche terrain, if you have reception, you can call the rescue team at 122. The second thing you should be really curious about is, what is your chance of survival if you are trapped in an avalanche? And we know from many years and from studies that 18 minutes is the critical time to get out of an avalanche to have a good chance of survival. If you are buried longer than 18 minutes, your chance of survival drops significantly. And that is the link to your companions. Your companions are your safety on board when riding powder. Because if you're trapped in an avalanche, your companions are ready to help you and they are on duty and on site. If we look to the statistics, probably a helicopter crew after the alerting needs up to 30 minutes to fly in with the helicopter to bring the first rescue guys in to help you. And be aware of the first helicopter not drop so many people and so many rescue resources. So it's really your chance, and your only chance to survive is your companions. Rescue is helps you if you go for training, if you spoke to your companions how to operate or how to do if the avalanche happens. That is a key preparation, and you should do this on a really, really common base, because that minimizes your risk and enlarge your chance of survival. Studies from many years ago shows an interesting survey a couple of years ago. I think it's beginning of the 2000s. Shows that if you only travel with an avalanche transceiver and you are caught in an avalanche, it takes up to an hour to get you out and to dig you out or to bury you out of the avalanche debris, which is a really, really low chance of survival. Those who travel in addition to an avalanche beacon with a shovel, they get a better chance because the time to rescue those ones are 26 minutes. But the best thing is keep the whole avalanche essential or the whole safety essentials with you. And that's an avalanche transceiver, it's a probe, and it's a shovel. Why you need all those stuff? Yeah, in the beginning, the avalanche transceiver is your first line of survival. Your companion can search for you with the probe. They can pinpoint you and can really identify the point where you're buried, and with the shovel they can excavate you. In addition to the safety essential of those three products, now for many years we have avalanche airbags on the market. And a study from 2014 made by the Swiss Avalanche Institution in Davos, and as well as in combination with the University of Vancouver, led by Pascal Hagerly, shows that the chance of survival is increasing by 100% if you wear an airbag instead of not wearing an airbag. The results are pretty clear. Those riders are riding in the backcountry and caught in an avalanche without an airbag, has 20% of those are buried, and those ones who are wearing an airbag, only 11% of them are buried in an avalanche. So that's the proof of an avalanche airbag works. And an avalanche airbag is the addition of your safety essential. It doesn't mean if you wear an avalanche airbag that you can put all the rest of the safety essential at home. No. The safety essential is necessary to rescue people that are caught in an avalanche. But to be buried or to prevent the burial depths in an avalanche, the airbag is the right product to choice. We talk a lot on the last slides. We already talked about the importance of those avalanche safety gear. If we look into the middle, we have the the safety essentials: avalanche transceivers, a probe, and a shovel. On the left-hand side, we have the avalanche airbags. They help to prevent you in the best case, that you're buried in an avalanche, and in the other cases, they potentially reduce your burial depths. The latest studies in this avalanche rescue science shows that a normal human being who has a good fitness level takes at least 6 minutes to dig out an aerial burial subject from 1 meter. The standard burial depth in Europe is in between 1 meter and 1 meter 20. And if you go back to the chance of survival or the survival curve, that you only have 18 minutes before your chance of survival drops significantly. 6 minutes is a lot, because if we think about, okay, avalanche happens, it takes potentially 2 or 3 minutes until everybody is in place, aware what happens. If you're back on your skis, if you're ready to rescue, then you put out your avalanche transceiver, you turn it into search mode, you start searching. So if you are well trained and if you know what you do, it takes you another 3 to 5 minutes. So the first 8 minutes are gone. Then I would say another 2 minutes to put out probe and shovel out of your backpack, start pinpointing with the probe. So there's potentially only 6 or 8 minutes left to dig out the burrowed subject. So there you see the essential of an avalanche airbag, because if your burrow depth is only half of the average of burrow depth, so only half a meter, then you only need 3 minutes to dig out your companion, which completely pays off on the survival chance. And in addition to those avalanche safety gear, we recommend to travel into backcountry with a first aid kit, take a map with you, take a compass with you, a BB bag, a smartphone, or potentially a radio. A radio communication is a good thing. If we remember the avalanche accident we see in the beginning, if those guys wearing radios, the two guys in the middle can give the guy on top a hint and say, hey, we are in the middle of the phase. Please wait until we are on the bottom. Here's a slide, a small slab avalanche coming down here. We have to manage our choices, so don't ski into the face. So a radio is a really, really good tool for groups to communicate in the backcountry, especially for free riders. They don't know where they ride. They don't see each other if they ride too far down into the run, into the chute. So that could be very helpful. And as well as, if it depends on what you're doing, if you're going to steep couloirs, or if you look to Europe, if you're going to Chamonix or to Verbier, or all those really, really steep riding spots, probably a rope and all those stuff is necessary. Or if you travel to a glacier, the glacier equipment. The good question is, we talk a lot about the airbag, and we say, hey, the airbag is a chance to keep you on the surface of an avalanche. And let's have a look how those works.
La neige, alors on fait la ligne de fente de la corniche un peu plus haut.
Pour le minage, Nico, ok pour le minage. Visibilité perdue sur les deux airbags. Visibilité perdue sur les deux airbags. Ok, les deux mannequins sont localisés en surface. Au boulot les gars, merci.
Là, ils ont fait une 250 mètres de descente, ils ont passé un pouillet avec de la caillasse, c'est vraiment parti au sol sur une toute vieille couche. Ben voilà, que dire, ils sont en une pièce, le sac à tenue, les sanglots tenus, les gaillards étaient à plat ventre, mais plutôt vraiment bien sur la surface, on a pu rapidement les voir.
C'est clair, s'il a la bouche dehors et le nez, les chances de survivre, ils sont beaucoup plus hauts. Ouais.
Là, je pense qu'en 35 secondes, il est libéré, le gaillard. Là, on est sur le live bag. On va voir en combien de temps on le sort. Mais à mon avis, c'est moins d'une minute. On y va? À deux. Les genoux. Voilà. Voilà, donc en 30 secondes, il est dehors, notre gaillard.
That was a huge avalanche, and the pictures you saw is a couple of years ago from our field validation tests we do with our airbag systems. How does it work? What is the effect to stay on the surface? It's technically or scientific-wise, it's a sorting effect, or in an easier way to explain, it's a it's a cornflakes effect. So if you remember the breakfast in the morning and you have your favorite choice of cereals, and you know they are really the big nuts and you love most, and you want to take a choice to have the biggest chunk out of those nuts. So then put out the box of your cupboard and just shake it a little bit on the way to the breakfast table. And then make sure that you're the first one who can take out of this box, because then all those nuts, those lovely, tasteable nuts, they are big and huge, traveling up to the rest of the cereals. And that's how it works. Because in this moment where you pull the trigger of an avalanche airbag, you inflate a balloon with 150 liters. So you make your human being with a small, small particle to a big, huge particle in relation to the snow and to the snow slabs they sliding down the mountains. And so that will end up that the big particles will travel up on the liquid or on the snow surface, and the other one, the smaller particles, are traveling down. And that's the effect. So your chance of survival increase by staying on top of the avalanche on a sorting effect. What we are doing at MAMMUT, we have got two different kinds of airbags in our assortment. We have a protection airbag and a removable airbag. The protection airbag offers, in addition to staying on top of the surface or having an increased chance of survival, also a trauma protection. The airbag balloon comes up of the shoulder straps and builds like a life jacket, and pack your head in between both of them. So for riders, they have a favorite home resort or a choice with a lot of trees or rocky terrain, will have a positive effect of those trauma protection, because if you slide down the avalanche or have to ride in the avalanche and you come too close to a tree or something, those airbag balloon will work like an airbag in your car, or has the chance to work like an airbag in your car, because it will protect your head as well as helps to travel up in the avalanche that goes down with you. The next one is, and I think it's the most important thing, and it's the first thing in our safety essentials, is the avalanche transceiver. We say that if time is your enemy, and if you are in an avalanche rescue, time is definitively your enemy. If you remember of just 18 minutes from the beginning, fast is your friend. We at MAMMUT believe that easy handling, fast rescue, and powerful search is the necessary equipment, or the necessary features your equipment need to support you well and in the right manner. What does easy handling mean for us? A couple of years, if we start the development of our current generation of beacons, we asked some scientists, how can we do better? What can we improve on our devices to make them easier to use and to support people in a better manner? Fast rescue, it's important. Everybody wants to be fast, and we want to short the distance. And powerful search means we want to keep our devices on the technical limit, what happens in terms of range and search strip wide. Most important, if you look into an avalanche beacon, is how good avalanche beacons can travel interferences or can deal with interferences, especially in send mode. Because we know you're traveling with a lot of gadgets, you have metal parts with you, you have a GPS device, you have a smartphone, probably have some power bars with you, and they are packed in aluminum foil. And avalanche transceivers are very, very old tradition technology from out of the 1970s, and they're working like, simple spoken, like an old analog radio. If you remember your times, and I hope you're not too young in this perspective, on those old radios, you have a big wheel where you can tune this wheel to get the best audible out of this box. And if you turn it a little bit too much, then you have a lot of noise, and it sounds like wind in the speaker. And that comes belong of interference. And the beacon has the same problem. A beacon is nothing else than a radio frequency or an analog frequency technology. And if you put an electronic magnetic voice or a source of electronic magnetic voice too close to a beacon, you will shield them. And so the device is not able any longer to send out the signal in the right manner. And so it's important to keep all electronic devices, all metal parts at least 20 centimeters away from your avalanche transceiver. So if you wear your avalanche transceiver in your harness, like here, please don't put your smartphone in your chest pocket. Just put your smartphone in the backpack or in the pocket of your pant, but never put them on top of it. Don't put your power bars in the same pocket on the same side, because this can have a negative effect. If we're coming back to this easy handling and how can we improve on an avalanche transceiver or make them easier to operate, we asked the scientists, and they say, hey, let's ask people in the field, and we're doing some surveys. So they say, hey, let's find 12 to 15 people. They are really involved in an avalanche accident, and we ask them in an interview what we can do better, because then we would learn probably 90% of the things they're looking for to improve. And they do so. I think we have done 12 people. They are willing to talk to us about what happens and about what they experienced during this avalanche rescue. And I still remember really one interview with a professional rescue guy. It's a guy from Switzerland, working there. It's a mountain guide, working there 20 years for a professional rescuer. And he said, hey, it's a completely normal job. I love my job. For sure, part of my job is to come to rescue people out of avalanches, which is normally pretty traumatic and ends up in the worst scenario that people die under the avalanche. And in this, we don't do, myself as a product manager don't do these interviews. We have scientists for this and experts. They are really trained on doing these interviews. But we got the transcription of these interviews, and he described two scenarios in the same week. He said, hey, start snowing on Sunday, snow continues until Monday. We know we got half a meter of fresh snow, really critical avalanche conditions, and probably Wednesday was the first day with really clear sky, bluebird day, pretty cold. So avalanche rating was something in between 3, considerable. So everything we learned from Holyoke before, really those golden triangle was happening. And he was pretty sure he come into duty, he know, okay, today would probably an avalanche accident happen and I have to go there. And it was 10 o'clock, he told us, and the alerting comes. So he packed up his stuff, walked over to the heliport, helicopter comes in, picked him up, fly him up in the mountain, and a group of 3 ski tourists was trapped by an avalanche. 2 were buried, 1 were trying to survive there as companion rescuer. And he operates the rescue, he performed, and he say, unfortunately, 1 of those 3 has died and 1 has survived. And he say on the end, as a typical alerting, a typical thing on avalanche rescue. And he goes back and he say, yeah, it was as normal. Everything worked well. He knows exactly what to do, put out his beacon, turn it into search, performed well. And then on Friday, he has a day off, and he decided to travel with his wife to the backcountry, to the avalanche terrain. They make a ski tour. And unfortunately, he said he don't know why, but they also were trapped in an avalanche, and his wife was buried. And he explained to us, in this moment, the world completely changes. It comes from this really outside perspective of I'm flying to a rescue site. I don't know the people. I just want to help and perform into I was really close involved. It is my wife. I know 18 minutes. I know that I have to perform. I know I have to find her as soon as possible. My probing must be perfect, and I have to start digging. Luckily, her wife survived. But he say, hey, in the beginning, it happens. It takes him, he say, if you're looking back, it takes hours to put out his phone. It don't happen. His colleagues say he called pretty quick, but he say he was really frozen. And if we look to the scientists of this, normally there's 2 concepts for people. One of them are froze. It's like a rabbit in front of a snake, and others are getting overacting and try to do everything and running around like headless chickens. And then we sit in this round together with those experts, and we say, hey, what should we learn out of this? And they say, yeah, what you learn is that you should help people to guide them with your user interface. Because out of the other interviews, we learned also that people say, hey, we trained every year. We're doing every year a refresher, and we trained a lot. But if it really comes to reality, we forgot everything. And that's why we come out on the Barry Fox S to say, hey, we built in there the biggest possible display at this time, and we try to serve people with an animation on the screen to give them a little bit of Kickstarter, that they remember what they learned in their courses. So to break the ice, to break those freeze and say, hey, next step is. We want to give them on every step of the rescue a positive confirmation. We want to be with them during this rescue, say, hey, in signal search, that is how to run the pattern. Or now it's time to stop searching on our find search and to use a probe. So next step, avalanche rescue search is performed. So go to pinpointing, use the probe, and if you have the probe hit, go to shoveling. And then the second thing was an education guy. He said, yeah, well, you asked you, what should you do that people really get easy familiar with your beacon? I was funny. It was a second meeting. I met at this university, these guys, and they say, hey, we have set up the meeting room. You can sit in there. We still have to do something. We have to fix something. We join you in a couple of minutes. Have a seat, have fun, enjoy the time. We are still with you. And they have put some boxes on this table. I think it was 5 or 6 boxes. Not very big, not very small. And it was on the table, and I was a little bit sitting there. I don't know what to do. And I start stabling these boxes on top of each other. So I built a bridge. I tried to build a bridge and do some forms, and I'm playing around with them. But on the end, I typically stabled in on top of them. And then I realized it takes a really while until they show up in the room. And 2 of those profs are really smiling, and one of their assistants was a little bit laughing and say, hey, sorry for being late. And I thought they have making some jokes outside of the room. I don't know. I was a little bit off the grid because I'm playing with those boxes. And they say, hey, yeah, well, let's go directly to the topic. We go really directly on. You say, hey, you asked us, what should you do that people get easy familiar with how to search with your beacon? And you give you the answers by yourself. I was completely, what? I'm sitting here for 5-6 minutes, nothing happens, and I'm playing with these boxes. That was my answer. And then this professor said, that's exactly the point. Why do you think why you start playing and stabling those boxes? I say, I don't know, because they're just on the table and I have nothing to do, so I start playing. I say, yeah, exactly. And that's what you learned pretty early in your life. Probably in between 6 or 12 months, you learn as a small kid or as a toddler, you learn how to put things that are looking similar to each other, how to stable in on top of each other, and you will never forget about it. Because over the whole life of your whole lifespan, you always remember what you learned at this time. And you say, that's the point. If you're doing an arrow, because an arrow is important to guide your users over the avalanche debris to the closest point of the buried subject, if you wear an arrow or keeping an arrow, which are people familiar from their daily life, it is the easiest to learn to operate those devices. And I say, yeah, well. And I was looking out of the window and we saw a typical road sign that gives you instruction driving forward, going to the right and the left. And say, yeah, if you use exactly those arrows, most of the people are familiar with those arrows because they are driving a car or they are aware of how to operate in the traffic. And then he said, and a really, really good side effect is driving in a traffic or driving a car is always a stressful situation. For sure. Remember, you're driving to a big city, you have 6 lines going into the city. If you're driving there at 1 or 2 o'clock at night, there are probably 1, 2, 3 cars with you, so it's pretty easy. You don't have to take so much care about if you're shifting from one lane to the other. But if you're traveling there in the rush hour, probably at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, where all lines are blocked, then it's pretty hard to operate. And that would help you because you are adapted to this stressful situation, and at the same time, you know exactly how to interpret those those arrows. And that's why our current arrows on our Barry Fox S looking a little bit like road signs. And that's what we learned out of this study too. So our concept is the easy handling based on 2 things. errors you're familiar with your daily use, and animations to get you on Kickstarter if you're in this scenario, to break your freeze, that you can start and you perform your search rapidly fast after this avalanche accident happens as a companion rescue. Probes. Probes is a thing, most of the people don't get why they should use a probe, but a probe is a really, really smart tool to confirm that the lowest point you detect with your avalanche beacon is in real life the buried subject. I think beacons are getting better and better over the time, and we're getting less the problem that we are searching for high power lines, for water tube lines, for the snow machines, or something else in ski resorts. But that happens from time to time, and there's nothing worse than digging for minutes and then realizing, oh, I've digged out the power line and not my companion. So what is important for a probe? Or going a little bit back and looking at our probe, you see there 3 things, they are orange. You already see orange on our airbag balloon and on our trigger, potentially. Now you potentially recognize what you see. And you see our avalanche transceivers. They have exactly 2 orange things. That is the keys of the main switch and the mark button. So out of the study I explained on this interview study, we also decided at MAMMUT to create a unique safety color, and that's our orange. That's orange. On avalanche safety products from MAMMUT, important parts are always marked with orange, also to guide you in this stressful situation of an avalanche rescue to know these are the things you have to focus on your product. On an avalanche transceiver, it's pretty simple. It's your keys, off, send, search, and it's your mark button. This is the only thing of the product you have to operate by hand. On an avalanche airbag, it's obviously the balloon is orange to get visible if you're on top of the snow on the surface, or if a little bit of the balloon is visible that people find you really quick, and the trigger handle to know that's where you have to pull. On probes, it's the same story. The puller to extend or to extend the probe is orange. Just pull this orange part. It's like on a life jacket in an airplane. Just pull on this, and then the cord will assemble the probe. Then we have the last segment is orange. That's also one of the psychological games. It's a positive confirmation. If you dig for minutes and you know, hey, I'm on the end of this 18 minutes, that's my companion, it's my wife, it's my buddy, it's my friend, whoever. You know, if you see the orange probe segment, this you know, now I'm close to him. Now I'm doing good. Now I can help him. I can dig him out. I can look that his airways are free, and I support him in the best way. And the third thing we have on our probes is a 1.50 meter scaling. If everything goes worse, probably you forgot people are buried without an avalanche transceiver. Dog search is not doing well, then it comes the last line of defense is searching with probe lines. And searching with probe lines, there are 2 strategies on the international standards. And the first run, all the probe line is going in a faster speed. It's in terms of probability, because from statistic, we know the average burial depth is in between 1 meter and 1.20 meter. So they say, okay, in the beginning, they make a quick run and only run the probe down to 1.50 meter, because then most likely they will find people, because they should be typically buried in between 1 meter and 1.20 meter. If this is not successful, then they're doing the second round with probe line, and then they're going down with the probe as much as possible. That means how long are those probes? And so they asked, hey, would it be possible, those rescue organizations asked, would it be possible to just mark those 1.50 meter? Because then it's easier for those probe lines. They don't have to look to the scaling. They just have to look, okay, as long as the orange marker in the middle is visible, then they have to push down the probe. If it's not any longer visible, then they are fine with 1.50 meter, can pull out the probe, okay, 1 step further and do the same action. That's why we have those. If we look a little bit closer into these 3 things, the puller should be made, or if you're looking into buying an avalanche probe, make sure that you're buying a product which is easy to operate, which has an easy handle to grab, even with mittens or with really, really big gloves, that you can pull easily those probe puller and can assemble the probe. Second thing is, as I explained, it's really, really helpful if you have those visual guiding system, this orange segment on the end, as well as the probe tip. So if you're looking for a probe, ideally the probe tip is a little bit wider in diameter than the tube of the probe themselves. That will make it easier to push down the probe and that the probe is not icing in the hole, so that you can perform your pinpointing very well. And last but not least is the visual guiding system. Those last segment, if this has a different color or ideally it's orange, that is really, really helpful if you are digging later in the process, because then you know, okay, it's something, it feels good. If you really, you will, I hope that you never will be in this situation, but if you want in the situation and you dig for a bird subject and you see this orange segment, that really feels good because you know, now I'm close to him. That's really something that gives you the last push to run this to an end. And as I explained, the 1.50 m marking, that's something which can be pretty helpful in this unlucky event of a probe line. If we're looking over to an avalanche rescue shovel, if you go out in the market and you asked in the store, hey, I want to have a shovel for traveling to the backcountry to rescue people, make sure that you look for a solid, reliable shovel. And it's now, I would say it's 4 years ago, the International Climbing and Mounting Association, the UAA, come up with an international avalanche rescue standard. Because what we often see is that it's not really uncommon that so far called avalanche shovels are broke during avalanche rescue. And so the UAA decided, hey, let's do a standard that keeps the minimum requirements for a product to perform the need of an avalanche rescue. What does this mean? Normally an avalanche shovel should have really a solid aluminum plate, should be a rectangular plate that you can step on it, because avalanche debris is pretty consistent. I would compare it to concrete because it's really packed, so it's a really hard work to bring the shovel down and to break out the blocks, so the plate should be solid enough. It would be pretty helpful to have a telescopic handle, because if the handle of the shovel is too short, you will potentially exhaust really fast. And if you remember 6 minutes to dig 1 meter alone, then you should handle with care your power or your resources. So make sure that you have this. For sure, there's a decision of different kind of handles. One is a D handle, where you can really go easily through it. It's really comfortable to shovel with a D handle, for sure. Has a little bit the disadvantage, it's a little bit space consuming. So we also have, there are so far ergonomic T handles on the market. We really have an underclink of those T handle to have a really good control. The advantage is it's a good combination out of the advantage of a D handle and a really space consuming size. So it's a good choice you can go for. And for sure, there are some shovels, they have a how position. The how position is pretty helpful if you have to move away a lot of snow on the end of the converter belt if you're shoveling, or for those guys in North America, you're more familiar with tree wells. If you have to rescue a rider out of a tree well, because if you're stepping too close to a tree well, a lot of snow will drain into the tree well. So it's pretty helpful to have a shovel with a how mode or how function, because then you can stay a little bit beside the tree well and can really drain the snow away, which is the best way to excavate a rider out of a tree well. So what is important, or what are the requirements to get the proof of the UAA standard certification for shovels? One thing is there's a bending and a pulling test. So there's a minimum requirement, strength requirement for a shovel. One is a pulling test that makes sure that those pin balls, which keeps all parts together, is strong enough and solid enough. And there are another 2 requirements. The blade size should be at least 500 square centimeters. All shovels there have a smaller blade size than 500 square centimeters. I heard on one of my US trips the word Mickey Mouse shovel. That's really too small, because with a blade size below 500 square centimeters, you can't be fast and you can't be ensure that you can dig out the buried subject in less than 6 minutes. And the total length of the shovel should be at least 75 centimeters from the tip of the blade to the end of the handle. If shovels fulfill those requirements, then they can get the stamp and the proof as a UAA avalanche rescue shovel. Think about, we talked about be prepared in the beginning, so you should have your backup plan, you have the numbers available to call the rescue teams, and how to perform the search now, or to perform the search now. This is that's not a typical picture, but it's a picture if a lot of people are on the avalanche side and try to do their best. You see here 2 converter belts. A lot of people are digging for those 2 buried subjects. You see a lot of probes in these pictures. You see some guys are waiting because at some point of time it makes no sense to shovel with more than 3 or 5 rescuers on one side, and the others are waiting to support first aid and everything else. They are typically for beacon search 3 fast. It's a signal search. In the beginning of the search, you don't have a signal. And now it comes into account if you have a big search strip wide, especially of 70 meters as MAMMUT beacons, you get pretty early a signal. That was also a really interesting thing we learned of the study, because people say, hey, it is so much, it gives you so much more confidence if you have an arrow, a distance and direction information on the beacon, because then you know, okay, I'm coming closer. That's why we enlarge the power of our devices to 70 meter search strip wide. In the course search, you just get a distance and direction indication, then you follow the display and the arrow, and it guides you through the buried subject. And in the fine search, you perform your cross bracketing to detect or to identify the point with the lowest signal, and this is the point where you're closest to the buried subject. If this happens, then you have performed your beacon search, and you put down your backpack, put out your probe and your shovel, and start pinpointing. And if you get a positive hit with the probe, then you start digging. Think about if you start with your avalanche search. Think about interference. We got a lot of reports of that trainings are messed up, or even that rescue operations are screwed up because people oversee this. And we talked in the beginning about interference in send mode. In send mode, it's a different story. A beacon in send mode wants to send out the strongest signal to go really far, to spread this as much as possible away. And if you have there an interference source, or if you have there something out of metal, it works like a shield. It's like a cheese bulb. They want to shield those, and the signal can't travel so far. It's different in search mode. In search mode, those devices are built as very, very sensitive receivers or transceivers. And they want to receive really, really fine signals, or signals from far away. And if you have now interfering sources too close, the noise in the transceiver is too big, and the transceiver can't get those signals or can't separate the signals. And then you will not perform your search pretty quick. So my advice to you, keep at least all electronic devices, all metal devices, and everything else 50 centimeters away from a searching beacon. If possible, turn off your electronic devices. If you're more than one rescuer, one should do the rescue call, and those one who's searching, turn off your device, put it in your backpack. I know, if you're the only man or the last man standing on the avalanche side, you will not turn off your device. But then make your rescue call first, put your phone in the backpack, keep it as much as possible away from the searching beacon, and perform your search. Don't start searching and at the same time do the rescue call. That's stupid. That will screw you up. That will not be successful. And think about if you're wearing a gadget like a GPS tracker watch or something else, then make sure that you hold the beacon in the opposite hand of where you have the watch on your wrist. Why it's important to have a large search strip wide. With a large search strip wide, your chance of getting a signal pretty fast increases, and that's what I explained before. If we once have a signal and we can guide the rescuer by distance and direction, it's a positive confirmation for you. You get motivated. It's really a positive sign. Think, okay, it's moving forward. I'm fast, and we can guide you on the fastest way in the best possible way to the bird subject. To put this all in a nutshell, how does it work? It's avalanche rescue. It's a little bit similar to the approach of landing an airplane on an airport. In the beginning, the airplane is pretty fast because it's traveling far away. As close as it comes to the airport, descent starts on the airplane and they're reducing speed. And that's the same as we do. In the signal search, nobody cares. Try to speed up as much as possible. Yes, I know. If you have to run to an avalanche debris, this is not a street. This is not a plain area. There are potentially really big blocks. So it's really hard to walk through. But try to be as fast as possible. Look that you get the first signal. If you have this first signal in the beginning, just focus on the arrow and try to keep the best way that the arrow always points forward. And if you come closer and closer, then slow down. Because avalanche beacons are made in a way that they send out only a signal each second. And if a signal is sent out only each second, you only get the information where the bird subject is each second. If you're coming from far away, I would talk 70, 60 meters. It's not important because we can give you the direction where you have to go. And it's not so important if we have every second and information to be precious. But if you're approaching to the bird subject and coming closer and closer, we want to guide you really precious to locate or to spot the point with the lowest point to the bird subject, which is the point with the strongest signal. So we need more and more information. And that's why you should tune down your speed and work then a little bit more controlled and focus more on the distance arrow. For especially if you reach the point of 10 with the distance information of 10 on the display, then slow down, look that the arrow is accurate, pointing forward, and then approaching slowly by putting the device down on the height of your knee. That would help if you always have the same distance between the snow surface and the device to avoid mistakes of failure informations. Slow down, because on the end it's not important if it takes 20 or 30 seconds longer to identify the closest point to the bird subject. But if you take your time there and you are really precious, then you will have the probe hit in between 2 or 3 probe strikes. If you're off center of the closest point, then it takes you longer with the probe and you lose the confidence that you have performed your beacon search well. How that probing works, if we look to the probe, ideally you put out your probe of your backpack, you expand your probe and you start probing. If you start probing, make sure that you place the probe in a 90 degrees angle to the snow surface, because otherwise, which you see on the picture now, there's orange probe. If you're not performing the probe, the pinpointing by keeping this plus minus in a 90 degrees angle to the surface, then it's pretty likely that you train down the probe beside the bird subject, and it takes you longer to perform the probe spiral. How to shovel or how to excavate a bird subject. We talk a lot about this 1 meter in 6 minutes. If you're more than one rescuer, there's a really good strategy to line up those rescuers next to each other, keep the distance of a shovel length, and that's a good lineup that you're really working with economically friendly to shovel first. And now We have the excavating, how to perform the excavating. Then if you have the lineup, then spread out a little bit, shoveling. The first guy has really, really hard work to break the snow blocks out. Number 2 and 3 in this pictures has to transport the snow into the bag. That's why we call it a converter belt. The first guy, it's really a hard job as the first guy to shovel. So we recommend that you rotate every 2 till 4 minutes to shift in between those positions, so that the first guy who really has a hard work come to the end, because the position on the end is most likely the laziest job, and so you can get a little bit retired before you come back into the first position. Now, we're coming to an end. I can really invite you, get familiar with your avalanche safety gear, train with your gear, and make sure, especially on an avalanche airbag, that you wear them right. And now I'm happy that one of my lovely colleagues is here on stage. I will put out my... Hi, Ada. It's nice to have you here. So I will put out my mask. So Ada is wearing an avalanche airbag, and now we turn her around. So make sure that the avalanche airbag fits perfectly to your body. Place your load controls in the right way, and make sure that your hip belt is closed. You see in the beginning here, that's the leg loop. The leg loop is saying, if I'm traveling to avalanche terrain, or if I'm guiding or educating people, I see a lot of folks, they having an airbag and they believe in them and they want to use it, but they think this leg loop is necessary, and some of them have cut them off, some have stored them somewhere else, but sometimes people are not wearing it, and that is dangerous. Because if you think about it, an avalanche has a lot of power, and if you ride down in this avalanche, you will make one tomahawk beside the next one. It's like those people I talked to, they were caught in an avalanche, say it's like on a laundry machine. And what then happens is, because you have closed your chest strap, and if you don't wear the leg loop, then it's a big potential that if you deflate the airbag, that this airbag will pull up by the avalanche, and those chest strap will struggle you. And you die on this. We have several reports where people really died, not by the avalanche, but they were really caught up by the strap because they forgot the leg loop. So the leg loop is important to wear. So now I come over to the other side. Then you have the handle is placed here. So you can open up those 2 zippers. And normally you have different positions here, S, M, and L, where you can place the handle. We have now put it into large. Then you can close it here, and you can come with the zipper up here, so that make sure that those handles sticks really away from your body, because you have to think about if you want an avalanche, you totally lose the relation what is upside down. And so make sure that it's really prominent, that you just pull over with your hand and can pull it. Then you can fold off the handle, and now you're ready to ride. And let's try if Ada can pull the handle. So let's try. So what you see now, it takes until 3-4 seconds until the whole airbag is inflated. Now the airbag is completely inflated, and if Ada were now caught in an avalanche, she most likely will travel up the surface. If you think about if you're traveling in a cable car, I would recommend that you fold the handle. So pushing the black button, by pushing the black button, you release the handle. You can fold it, open the zipper, put it back to avoid deflations by accident. How was it, Ada?
Good. Safe.
Safe. Okay. If you feel safe now, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So, I would like to welcome Frederick back on stage for a Q&A session. Frederick, what do you learn today in this presentation?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, Ilari, for this great content and all these informations. And thank you very much to Holly as well, to Canada. I think it was very interesting to listen to you and to hear to see how experienced you are in explaining what is the terrain about, where are the danger zones, and how do I have to prepare myself for planning the trip. And also all the gear information Ilari shared with us. It's just impressive to see what is relevant and what needs to be respect it if you go out there, and I really can recommend to all of you to follow the recommendations we gave you today, and yeah, listen to what you have heard, follow it, and train, train, train. Now we will use the opportunity or the remaining time for our Q&A session. We saw that the live chat was already very, very active. So thanks as well to all of you out there. It was great to see how you asked questions, how you were answering questions from other people, and it's really great to see how active the community is there and how relevant this topic is, actually. Perhaps we can start with the first question. Ilari, it's a question for you. What is the negative effect of a phone on a transceiver, on a transmitting or receiving?
Yeah, the negative effect is, I would say, our today's phones are not a simple phone, those are supercomputers. And those supercomputers, we pay a little bit money of them or pay a fortune for them. It depends on what brand you choose. They're creating a lot of electronic voice. A display is the most interfering source. And if you have the phone too close to your beacon in send mode, most likely the signal which is sent out by the beacon will not be strong enough and not will reach the international standard for avalanche beacons. So potentially, if you travel with them to the backcountry and you were caught in an avalanche, your companion rescuers, they perform with the standard search strip wide they are given from the manufacturers, but potentially not catch you up because your beacon is not sending strong enough. That's the risk. Normally a good beacon, like MAMMUT beacons, should be made in a way that we have a send LED. Every time if we send out our send signal or our signal, we measure those signal, the strength of the signal, and compare it to the standard. As long as those are fine, we confirm this signal by a flash of the LED. If we realize that the signal is disturbed and is below the international standards, then we come up with a warning information to warn you to separate those beacons from interfering source. And the transmit doesn't transmit in receiving mode. It's the opposite side. It's like the sensitivity. We lose the sensitivity of the receiver, and we probably oversee with the search in the given search strip wide, we oversee beacons because of the noise is too big, and if the noise is too big, we can't separate signals, and we oversee them. So that's pretty simple. Simply the case. The problem is much bigger in the transceiving mode than in the transmitting mode.
Okay, thank you very much, Ilari. This is a question for Holly. Wouldn't anchors like rocks be strengthening points though? I don't understand how an open, thick face is safer. Holly, it's a question to you, to Canada.
The answer is deep. There's two sides to that for sure. The rocks can be anchors, which can be a very good thing. But the problem is if the rocks are breaking up the snowpack on the edges, you have a weak section. It's very thin and it's not deep, it's not stable. And in sections where there's no rocks, you have a much thicker snowpack and it becomes more stable. So in my case, it's difficult comparing it to your terrain in Switzerland. In Canada, for example, on the coast, we have very thick snowpack and less rocky features. And I avoid those rocky features. I try to ski the thick sections of the snowpack. Obviously, if there's a slab on top of that, sure, it's a problem, but it can trigger where the rocks are. That can be the weak point where it can then break across the slope and then the whole slab could slide down. But in the Rockies, we have a different snowpack. It's not as deep and there's more rocks in a lot of areas. And so it's a less stable snowpack. The answer, I apologize, is it's quite deep and there's lots of books about it. I can recommend if you want to send me an email afterwards.
Yeah, thank you very much, Holly. It's very interesting to hear this information from from someone experienced in the terrain out there. Let's see question number 3. Ilari, it's a question for you. Can you put an airbag into another backpack than MAMMUT?
For sure, there are different brands on the market with airbags. MAMMUT has licensee partners like Thule or Dakine or Evok or Jones. So they're doing backpacks. They are ready for taking a MAMMUT Avalanche airbag system in on the removable airbag system. For the protection airbag system, it's that only fits into a MAMMUT airbag pack.
But probably to follow up on this question, it's not possible to put an airbag system into a backpack which is not made for carrying an airbag, right?
That's for sure, yeah, because there's different kind of requirements in terms of the anchor points for this airbag system. They must be strong enough. There are strengthens requirements, and they has to be tested. So you can't put an airbag system only in the backpack. Yeah, for sure you can. The effect would be that your balloon will inflate inside the backpack, which is not the same effect as it inflates outside and keeps this 150 liter of volume.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend this. Don't do this. That's dangerous. That's a no-go.
Yeah, good. Thank you for answering. So what's the next question? Let's have a see. Do the airbags need professional service after deployment in an avalanche? Could it be damaged for the next time? It's another question for you, Ilari.
Yes, for sure. So for those of you they are caught in an avalanche and has used their avalanche airbag, we offer that you can send it to MAMMUT free of charge. We have a look at it, and then we come back what is the best way probably to repair it or to replace it. We are pretty open on this, and we asked everybody who has really used this airbag in an avalanche accident, don't use it twice, send it back to MAMMUT. We do a service check, we look if everything is in place, and then we find a really good solution for you. Because I'm most happy if I can talk to a consumer after he is caught in an avalanche. That's not so often happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you need information on the address or where to send it to, you will find everything on mammut.com. There is all necessary information, and then you can send it over to our customer service or give it a call or send it an email beforehand if you are unsure. Let's have a look. What is the minimal height, length of a slope to get buried in an avalanche? So with small hills would be safe. It's rather a question which goes to Holly.
So it's safe only if it was planar, meaning if you had a 20-meter slope, it doesn't seem very big. But if I have a big gully feature or a terrain trap underneath, and a size 1 avalanche was to bury me, it could actually be enough that I could be fully under the snow and unable to breathe because I'm in that terrain trap. So I look not necessarily at the size of the slope, but what is happening around me on the slope. Do I have overhead hazard, and do I have hazards below me? Maybe it's a cliff, a 10-meter slope, and then a cliff below me. Well, then I have an unsupported slope. So lots of different examples of how a small slope can still be unsafe.
Thank you very much, Holly. Let's see what the next question is. Can it be helpful to put the phone in an airplane mode while backcountry skiing? It's a question for you, Ilari.
Yes, thank you very much for putting in this question. That's a good question. If we are doing this live presentation 10 years ago, I would say potentially yes. We have to think about the difference in our phones. If you're looking back 10 years, we have pretty simple smartphones, and people thought at this time that the interfering was created by the communication between the phone and the network. As today, if we're looking to modern smartphones like Apple, Samsung, Huawei, or whoever producing them, these are supercomputers. And the interfering source is not coming from, or is not created by the connection between the phone and the network. That's partly interference, but it's not a strong part of the interference. The interference is created by these processors, by these computers who's built in, and even by the display. You make this difference pretty strong. If you fire up the display and put the smartphone close to a beacon with a display on, you will most likely generate a warning message on the screen. If you put the same test with a display which is not fired up, so with a blank screen, you will potentially not see any warning message. And the point of an airplane mode is airplane mode only shuts down the communication between the phone and the tower, or the network tower. But all your apps, like at Facebook, Instagram, ski tracking apps, GPS apps, and everything else is running, still running. There's only, from my experience, I'm using a Samsung phone with an Android system. And what I experienced there's a super energy saving mode, which shut down the phone to 3-4 apps and turn the display into a black and white mode, and reducing a lot of internal resources. That would help, that's an opportunity, but I really would recommend turn off electronic device what is not really needed during avalanche rescue. Please keep in mind, nobody needs GoPro pictures from an avalanche rescue. There are tons on YouTube. It's not necessary that you have the next video of this. Just turn it off, and it will really pay off in your avalanche rescue.
Okay, then let's come to our last question. Does wearing reco clothes makes a problem in search mode? I guess it's a question for you, Ilari.
Yeah, for sure. The answer is simple, no. They will not make a problem. That's not a problem for an avalanche beacon. So it's fine. A lot of companies or brands putting reco straps into their clothing. Sometimes if we have to search for people, they are not wearing a beacon, reco could be a really good alternative. I wouldn't say that reco should be the first choice as an avalanche rescue device, but could be an additional choice and will really not interfere with your beacon.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ilari. Thank you very much again, Holly. It was great having you.
Of course.
And I hope all of you really enjoyed the learnings and the helpful information we got from Holly and Ilari tonight. If you are interested in learning more and want more information, just go on mammut.com, or if you want to even do an avalanche rescue course, there are different companies offering this. There is the MAMMUT Alpine School, active here in Europe, or you go to the MAMMUT Mountain School, which is doing these kind of courses in the UK, or you find different organizations in your markets if necessary. But yeah, again, what you heard today, train, train, train. And if you have suggestions, or if you want to leave comments or something, and you want to see other workshops like this one tonight, please reach out to us throughout our social media channels or info@mammut.com, and we will take your feedback. I can only say thank you, keep safe, and see you in the mountains. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Stay
safe, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Holly. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.